Hello. If you're currently preparing for the TOEFL test and have no idea how to score high on the speaking section, keep watching this video because we'll cover everything you need to know to get a perfect 30 out of 30 on test day. We'll go over the structure of the speaking test, delve into tips and strategies to score 26+, discuss 12 versatile idiomatic phrases to boost your score, and go through the top linking words you can use in your answers. Then we'll tackle question 1, the most challenging task in the speaking section, and wrap up the video with 3 full speaking tests, so you can practice with me and improve your performance. If you need someone to evaluate your speaking and writing, sign up for our TOEFL course and schedule a consultation with me. I'll tell you how you would score in writing and speaking if you took the test tomorrow, and what you should do differently to get the score you want. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more TOEFL tips and strategies, and click the bell icon to be notified when the next video comes out. Let's get started. Tip number 1, study the speaking scoring rubrics. To get a high score, you need to know what the evaluators are looking for. So the best way to succeed in this section is to know exactly what to say and what not to say. For example, some test takers only think about their grammar and vocabulary and completely ignore what they're saying. Others, on the other hand, do their best to give 2 reasons in type 1 question and start stuttering or making mistakes in order to finish on time. There are also those who think that they should give a broad summary of the reading in questions type 2 and 3, or those who think they should not summarize the reading at all. In any case, all these people will never score higher than 23. Even if their speaking skills are very good. There are 3 main criteria you need to be aware of: delivery, language use, and topic development. You need to pass all 3, not just one. This is why I spent a lot of time both in the TOEFL prep course I created and in one-on-one sessions breaking down the speaking rubrics, so that my students have a checklist of things they absolutely need to get a high score. This brings us to tip number 2. Learn time management. The TOEFL speaking section is time sensitive, with only 4 questions to answer in 16 minutes. You have only 15 seconds to prepare for question 1 and 45 seconds to speak. And in those 45 seconds, you have to develop your opinion on a personal question and give reasons and examples for it. For example, you will be asked, do you agree or disagree with the statement that female and male university students should have separate residence halls? Now pause the video, give yourself 15 seconds to think about what to say, and try to give a detailed answer in 45 seconds, giving reasons and personal stories that would support your opinion. Not so easy, is it? So you need to practice managing your time effectively during your answers. Set a mental timer for each part of your answer, so you don't get caught off guard. For example, your introductory sentence in question type 1 should be no longer than 5 seconds. Otherwise, you won't have time to go into detail. In type 2 and 3 questions, you have to read the text, then listen to a conversation and a lecture, and then summarize what you learned in 60 seconds. Again, you need to know that you should spend no more than 15 seconds summarizing the reading, and at least 40 seconds giving details from the listening. You cannot effectively stay within the time limit if you don't use templates. Small structures for all 4 of your responses will help you score well and organize your ideas clearly. So tip number 3, start the same way for each question type. Simplify your approach by using the same introductory phrase for each question type. This will reduce the stress of getting started and help you start with confidence. This is why we need effective templates. For example, let's say your question type 1 looks like this. Your degree requires that you should choose a history course. Which of the following courses would you prefer? Art history, 20th century world history, science history. You only have 15 seconds to think about what you're gonna say, so in order to start confidently, you need to have an idea of what you might say. Of course, you can try to improvise, or you can use a set phrase. I can say, if I had to choose, I would definitely opt for an art history course. This would show the examiner that I can use conditionals. If I had to choose, I would. That I know idiomatic vocabulary, opt for. And that I can successfully paraphrase the task instead of just reading it. Also, I won't freak out about what to say, because whenever I see a question like this, I already know what my introduction will be. It will also allow me to spend more time on my reasons and develop them better. Another example. In question type 2, you will usually read a campus announcement and then listen to a conversation between two students discussing the announcement. You have 30 seconds to prepare, which is not a lot. So, if there is a change being discussed, you can always start your answer by saying, "The reading passage announces a change on campus." And then go on to summarize the reading. Imagine, you're stressed about what to say next, but you can confidently start with a memorized sentence. This will help you sound confident in what you say, which is important on test day, and give you motivation to continue with the rest of your answer. As you can see, templates are critical. Does that mean you cannot score high without a template? No, you absolutely can. But templates make your life a lot easier, increase your score, and help you prepare for the exam faster. That is why we have included both speaking and writing templates in our TOEFL prep course, which are sure to improve your speaking and writing scores and make you feel prepared and confident on test day. If you are struggling to prepare for the TOEFL test, cannot find the right resources, keep running out of time on the reading section, or stay silent during the 45-second speaking response because your mind goes blank every time you see the timer, click on the link in the description. We'll fix all that and help you score 100 and higher and achieve your dreams. Tip number 4, pick the right time and place to study. Avoid studying when you're too tired, especially at night. You'll only waste time and not improve. Instead, find a time in the morning or afternoon when you can concentrate better. 10 minutes of focused practice is much more beneficial than an hour of idling around the questions. For example, what I usually do with my students during our consultations is take a list of type 1 questions and then practice them for about 10 minutes. At first, I ask them to come up with opening sentences for 15 to 20 questions in a row until the skill becomes automatic and they no longer think about it. You should also practice answering questions in a noisy environment, since this is what you might experience on test day. Of course, you can practice in a quiet room first, but then play some music in the background or turn on a podcast to distract yourself. On test day, you may hear other students talking, so it's better to be prepared for a noisy environment ahead of time. Tip number 5, use a timer. Practice under time pressure to get used to the test conditions. It may sound obvious, and it probably does, but you should embrace the timer as your ally. There are students who are afraid of time, so when they see the minutes ticking away, they panic and cannot say a word. You can try speaking without the timer first, and then slowly incorporate it into your practice routine. Look at the clock at least twice during your answer to stay on track. For example, in questions 2 and 3, if you see that you have 40 seconds left, you should move on to the listening summary. Tip number 6, expand your vocabulary. Don't stick to the same set of words. Include a variety of vocabulary to showcase your language skills. A diverse vocabulary not only impresses graders, but also adds depth and richness to your responses. This doesn't mean that you need to stuff your answers with low-frequency academic words that no one uses except in academic articles. Use thematic and idiomatic vocabulary. In our TOEFL course, we have compiled a list of such words on various topics, so you don't have to find them on your own. If you choose to prepare on your own, research topics such as science, study, work, entertainment, environment, and come up with 10 to 15 word lists for each topic. Tip number 7, practice, practice, practice. You know what they say, practice makes perfect. Record yourself responding to various TOEFL prompts. Play them back, identify areas for improvement, and fine-tune your responses. The more you practice, the more comfortable and fluent you'll become. And hey, it's a great way to track your progress. I like to give my students raw scores for each answer they give, because it motivates them to keep going. Start with question type 1, then move on to question type 2, and so on. You can also do complete speaking sections on YouTube to simulate the test conditions. Tip number 8, get professional support. Consider seeking guidance from experienced teachers. Whether it's a TOEFL tutor or an English teacher, having someone to guide your studies can be immensely beneficial. You can take our Get 100 Plus on TOEFL course to improve your skills, or use any other professional support out there. The important thing is that you get feedback a little earlier than a few days before the test. If you schedule a consultation the day before the TOEFL test, you will not have time to implement the skills and feedback that you will receive. So allow at least a few days between your consultation and the test. The first tip on our list is understand the structure. The speaking section is already quite intense. So to succeed on test day, you need to eliminate any factor that might make you even more anxious. Lack of familiarity with the structure of the test included. You'll see 4 questions. 1 is the independent speaking question. And what you just saw is a typical example of it. You'll have 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to speak. The next 3 are integrated speaking questions. They ask you to read, listen, and then summarize what you've learned. Question 2 is often called campus announcement, because it'll have a text and a conversation about a change on campus. Question 3 is what I call a general to specific question. You'll have a short text that explains the concept in general words. Then, you'll hear a lecture where the professor explains this concept. Your prep time for these 2 questions is 30 seconds. Your answer time is 60 seconds. Finally, question 4 is an academic lecture that you'll need to listen to and summarize. There is no reading passage this time, so you'll have 20 seconds to prepare. You'll still have 60 seconds to speak. However, when I say that you should understand the structure of the speaking section, I don't mean learning the facts I just told you. Go into more detail. For example, you need to know that in question 2, you'll need to find the main idea of the text and 2 supporting ideas. For example, the university wants to renovate the library because it's outdated and always overcrowded. When answering, combine the main idea and the supporting points into one long sentence. This will save you time, which you can use later to summarize the conversation, and will help you use a complex sentence in your response. You also need to know that the lectures in questions 3 and 4 are usually given in many short sentences, while your job is to summarize them in a few longer sentences to save time. Details like that are extremely important, because if you don't know them, you'll always feel like you're playing roulette, where your speaking score depends on pure chance. Instead, you want to make sure you've broken down each question in enough detail that you can approach it almost mechanically, like a robot. This way, you'll keep anxiety at bay and increase your chances of scoring high every time. Tip number 2, speak clearly, not quickly. A common problem many students have is that they think they have to speak super fast, with no pauses, not a single one. But that's just not realistic. When people try to do that, they end up making things worse by stressing themselves out even more. They get so focused on speed that they end up pausing or stuttering a lot more than they normally would. I've seen this happen a lot. Many of my students begin by telling me about their situation in fluent and confident English. But when the time comes to answer the first TOEFL question, it's as if I'm listening to someone else. Their responses become weak, they make many mistakes, and some may not even finish their thoughts. It's all because of stress, even in your native language. When you're under pressure, you'd be surprised at how much harder it is to express yourself. So don't add unnecessary stress by chasing speed. Instead, focus on clarity and pacing. Even if you speak more slowly, being understood is the most important thing. The third tip is use transition words. I'm not saying you should start every sentence with a linking word. You also don't need to use overly formal transition words like in addition, hence, or nevertheless. But using smooth transitions such as a result, on top of that, however, and for example, can really help structure your speech logically and make it more coherent. Just be sure to practice using these words beforehand so that they flow naturally when you speak. Tip number 4. Remember that note-taking is key for integrated speaking questions. In my private lessons, I always devote at least one session to note-taking because it's so important. Good notes account for about 60% of your success on questions 2, 3, and 4. For example, when you're working on question 2, write down the main idea and 2 supporting points as you read it. Let's say the passage looks like this. Your notes might be: eliminate sculpture classes, not enough students interested, sculpture professor retiring, limited budget. You don't need to worry about grammar in your notes. Always focus on writing down keywords and main ideas to keep your response organized. Also, don't write full sentences. It wastes time. Remember that your notes from the reading will help you predict the content of the listening section. For example, I know that the active speaker in this conversation will first talk about the fact that not enough students are interested in the course, and then discuss the situation with the professor. He or she may agree or disagree, but they will address each point in that order. Speaking of paraphrases, our 5th tip is to practice paraphrasing. To succeed on the TOEFL speaking section, you'll need to rephrase information from lectures and reading passages. You don't have to change every single word in a text or a lecture. Just replace some of them. For example, say eliminate instead of discontinue. Think of it more as simplifying the information you've read or heard, or saying it in different words. For example, instead of saying the professor is retiring, you might say the professor is stepping down. The professor is leaving the university. I usually suggest that you paraphrase a little more from the reading than from the listening, because that's the information you can see. However, you can still use some words from the text, especially if they're difficult to replace with synonyms or paraphrases. This won't affect your score. To practice this skill, think of synonyms for all the words you encounter in your speaking practice and daily life. Play a little game with yourself. Whenever you see something or think of a word in English, think of several other ways to say the same thing. This exercise will really help you expand your vocabulary and start paraphrasing quickly. Tip number 6. Work on pronunciation. You don't need a perfect accent, but clear pronunciation is essential. Work on tricky words and sounds that you find difficult. You can also practice on the Daily Dictation website. If you choose the TOEFL listening section there, you'll see many conversations and lectures where you can listen and repeat after the speaker. The vocabulary used in these recordings is very similar to the vocabulary you'll see on the TOEFL speaking test. So, try mimicking the speaker's pronunciation and intonation, and you'll soon see huge improvements. Tip number 7 is answer questions directly. This tip is especially true for the first question on the TOEFL speaking test. Many students start to go off topic and waste time. Instead, you need to answer the prompt directly and stay on point throughout your answer. This is where TOEFL speaking templates come in handy. If you have a set phrase that you start each answer with, you'll save a lot of time elaborating on your points and will be able to get a higher score. You can find high-scoring speaking and writing templates in our TOEFL course. Try to drill them first. Read each template out loud at least 4 to 5 times to make sure you don't stumble. Then, start practicing. Answer question after question using the template until it becomes natural and easy. This way, no matter what you're asked on test day, you'll feel confident and be able to give effective answers. We'll also take you through complete reading tests and explain how to approach each question quickly and effectively. For example, many students struggle with the insert text question, but there is a simple strategy that will allow you to ace it without wasting time. I'm leaving the link in the description below. Click on it and become part of our TOEFL community. Tip 8. Create extremely long sentences daily. This is one of my favorite TOEFL speaking exercises these days. My students definitely know this activity because I ask them to make sentences like this all the time. Why do you need these sentences? As I just said, the biggest challenge in questions 3 and 4 is that you don't have enough time to include all the details. Therefore, you should use longer sentences that allow you to present many details quicker. This is where words like which, and, so, and as a result, when, even though, while, if, and others come in handy. To practice these, try to create long sentences on a daily basis. For example, take any sentence starter. Let's say, when I graduated from college. Then start speaking. Try to say as much as you can in one sentence without breaking it. You're free to say whatever comes to mind. The main goal is to keep it all in one sentence. You could say, when I graduated from college, I started applying for jobs which took longer than I expected, and I felt discouraged at times, so I decided to take some online courses to improve my skills. And as a result, I became more confident in interviews, which helped me secure a job offer. And when I finally got the job, I realized how important it is to stay persistent, even when things don't go as planned right away. And so on. You get the idea. Using longer sentences allows you to avoid the pauses that are inevitable in between shorter sentences. And that, in turn, saves you time. So, if you have a few minutes to spare, create 2 to 3 sentences like this and see how long you can go. You can also keep up the challenge by making each subsequent sentence longer than the previous one. Tip number 9. Read out loud daily. Reading aloud helps reduce pauses and hesitations in your speech. Simply read out loud for 2 to 3 minutes each day. Try to avoid pauses. Use proper intonation and sound as clear as possible. It seems simple, but I'm sure you'll have a hard time avoiding hesitations and pauses at first. As you continue to work on this skill, your reading will become much more fluent, and so will your speaking. Most of my students notice the results within a few days. Let me know how this exercise works for you. Finally, the last tip is learn to recover from mistakes. As you've probably figured out, a big part of your success, about 40 to 50%, comes from staying focused and managing stress. If you stumble, freeze, or make a mistake, quickly correct yourself and move on. Graders value recovery more than perfection. If you start beating yourself up over a mistake, you'll only make more and damage your score. So, no matter what, don't stop halfway through your answer, even if you pause or made mistakes along the way. Trust me, you'll be glad you mastered this skill when the test day comes. These are 10 tips that will definitely help you improve your TOEFL speaking score. Let me know in the comments which ones you already knew and which ones were new to you. For a fun little challenge, try making up an extremely long sentence and post it below. We'll see who can come up with the longest one. I decided to share 12 idiomatic vocabulary items with you that can easily become an integral part of your answers on the TOEFL speaking test. Let's get started. The first phrase on our list is to pull an all-nighter. It means to stay up all night.
We're about to pull an all-nighter.
You can pull an all-nighter to study for an important exam. I've answered tons of TOEFL speaking questions, and believe me, this expression can come in handy for many of them. Let's take a look at the prompt I showed you at the beginning of this video. It says, you've been very busy and unable to prepare for the exam tomorrow. You can either stay up late to study and sleep less, or study less and get a full night's sleep. Which will you choose? When answering this question, you can give a personal example of how you used to pull an all-nighter every time you prepared for an important test. You can use it in situations with either a positive or a negative result. For example, I remember back in college, I'd pull an all-nighter every time I had an important test coming up. I'd shut myself in my room and really focus on reviewing all the material we'd covered earlier. This strategy was very effective and allowed me to ace all my exams. You could also say, in my freshman year of college, I used to pull an all-nighter before an important test and try to quickly review everything we'd covered. But this strategy didn't work for me. Since I barely slept, I felt miserable the day of the test and couldn't remember anything I'd learned the night before. I ended up failing a few exams and realized that getting a full night's sleep was much more important than cramming at the last minute. As you can see, you can use this example to your advantage, depending on your point of view. Also, this kind of example can work for other questions, not just those related to sleep. The next two helpful phrases to use on the speaking test are ace and pass with flying colors. They both mean to do something very successfully. We often use these expressions in connection with exams. For example, to ace an exam, or to pass an exam with flying colors, which means to get an A or the equivalent. In my previous example, I said, "This strategy was very effective and allowed me to ace all my exams." On the TOEFL, you'll always be talking about college life, so these two idioms may come up quite often. To end up means to reach or arrive at a place, situation, or a condition that was not planned or expected. It's super helpful for both independent and integrated speaking questions. We can use this expression when talking about decision-making. I originally planned to study engineering, but after exploring different fields, I ended up majoring in psychology because it was more in line with my interests. An example of unexpected outcomes: we ended up stranded at the airport due to a sudden snowstorm. Personal growth: when I started learning Spanish, I just wanted to pick up a few phrases for traveling, but I ended up becoming fluent and even studying abroad in Spain for a semester. Life choices: I always thought I would work in finance, but after volunteering at a local school, I ended up pursuing a career in education instead. Example of team projects: our team had different ideas for the project, but we ended up combining our ideas to create a solution that impressed everyone. Phrase number 5 is call it a day. This expression means to stop working on something, usually when you've done enough or when you're tired.
Then call it a day.
It's like saying, "I'm done for now." For example, after studying for several hours, you might decide to call it a day and get some rest. Another example, you're working on a group project, and after hours of effort, someone suggests, "Let's call it a day and continue tomorrow." You can often use this phrase in your answers to question 1 when sharing your personal stories. Another great phrase is "it's a no-brainer." This is a phrase I mentioned at the beginning of this video, and it's also part of one of our speaking templates. If you want to learn effective speaking section templates that will help you score high on test day, click on the link below and join our TOEFL prep course. In addition to the speaking section templates, you'll also find templates for effective writing responses and a detailed analysis of the reading and listening sections. If you would like to have your essays and speaking responses evaluated, choose the Pro package and prepare 2 essays for the consultation. We'll take a complete speaking test together, and I'll evaluate your writing and speaking performance. A no-brainer refers to a decision or a choice that's very obvious or easy to make. It's something that doesn't require much thought.
It's a no-brainer.
For example, if you're offered a great job with a high salary and excellent benefits, you might say, "Taking this job was a no-brainer." It's a handy phrase for emphasizing that something is clearly the best option. Let's look at how you can use this phrase in your answers. Suppose the question is, do you prefer to study alone or in a group? Explain your choice. You can say, "For me, studying alone is a no-brainer. I can concentrate better without distractions, and I have the flexibility to set my own pace." And then share a personal story to illustrate your point. You can also start your answers in question 1 with "it's a no-brainer that," and state your opinion. Next is the phrase "it's not rocket science." It's used to indicate that something is not as difficult as it may seem.
Barb, it's not rocket science.
It's a way of saying, "This is simple. It doesn't require any special expertise." So if your friend is struggling to figure out how to use a new app, you could say, "Don't worry, it's not rocket science. You'll get the hang of it in no time." If you watch my videos to the end, you'll see that I often finish by saying, "And remember, scoring 100 plus on the TOEFL isn't rocket science." This means that scoring 100 plus on the TOEFL test isn't as difficult as it may seem. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, be sure to do so and click the bell icon so you don't miss the upcoming videos. Let's look at some examples of TOEFL answers using this idiom. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Learning to cook is an important skill that everyone should have. Answer: I completely agree. Learning to cook is a basic life skill, and it's not rocket science. With a few simple recipes and some practice, anyone can become a decent cook. One more question. Do you prefer online learning to traditional classroom learning? Why or why not? You can say, I prefer online learning because of its flexibility. It's not rocket science to see the benefits. Being able to attend classes from anywhere at any time makes it easier to balance studying with other responsibilities. Phrase number 8 is get out of hand. When something gets out of hand, it means that it has become uncontrollable or chaotic. This phrase is useful when you're discussing situations where things escalate unexpectedly.
Gets out of hand.
You can say, the situation quickly got out of hand. Or, the party got out of hand after too many people showed up. Again, you can use this expression in both integrated and independent speaking tasks. If you're describing what happened in the lecture for question 3, or summarizing the student's opinion in question 2, you can always say that things got out of hand. Let's look at some examples. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Effective time management is essential for academic success. Answer: I agree that time management is critical. Without it, deadlines can quickly get out of hand. I remember one semester I didn't plan my assignments well, and everything piled up at the last minute, which was overwhelming. Another example. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? It's important to save money for the future. Answer: I completely agree. If you don't manage your finances carefully, spending can quickly get out of hand. I've seen friends struggle with debt because they didn't keep track of their expenses. And then share a personal story. 9. It turned out that is another useful expression.
And it turns out that...
We use this phrase all the time on the TOEFL speaking test. It often introduces the outcome of a situation, especially if it's surprising or different from what you expected. For example, I was nervous about the interview, but the interviewer turned out to be very friendly. Or, I thought I'd lost my keys, but it turned out that they were in my pocket the whole time. This phrase is perfect for discussing unexpected results or conclusions, and would be useful in any question on the TOEFL speaking test. Phrase number 10 is cram for exams. To cram means to study intensively over a short period of time, usually just before an exam.
Cramming for midterms?
This is a common strategy for students who are trying to learn a lot of material at the last minute. Remember, I used this phrase in my earlier answer. I said, I ended up failing a few exams and realized that getting a full night's sleep was much more important than cramming at the last minute. There you have it, 2 of the phrases we just covered in one sentence. I ended up failing a few exams and cramming at the last minute. As you can see, we can use the verb to cram, which means to study intensely, in a short period of time. You can say, I didn't study much during the semester, so I had to cram for the final exam. Or, when I realized that the final exam was only a few days away, I crammed all weekend trying to remember everything we covered in class. There is also the word cramming, which is a gerund, and can be used as a noun. Cramming for tests can be stressful. Here, cramming works as a noun and refers to the act of studying intensely in a short period of time. We can say, while cramming can sometimes help you remember information in the short term, it's generally not the best way to learn material deeply. 11. To live in a tight budget. To live in a tight budget is another expression you can use in many situations.
We're on a tight budget here.
It means to manage your expenses carefully because you don't have much money to spend. It's about being frugal and making the most of what you have. Talking about our college life, you can always say, as a college student, I had to live in a tight budget, so I cooked my meals at home instead of eating out. Or, living in a tight budget taught me to prioritize my spending. Let's say you're asked the question, if you were to choose between 2 apartments to live in next semester, one apartment is near the campus, but slightly expensive. The other is a little far from the campus, but cheaper. Which one do you prefer and why? You can say, I think living a little far from campus, but cheaper is a better option because it would allow me to save money. I remember as a student, I had to live in a tight budget, so saving money on rent was really important to me. I opted for a more affordable apartment, and even though the commute was a little longer, the extra savings went towards other necessities, like textbooks, groceries, or even a little leisure time. This helped me manage my finances better throughout the semester, and so on. And finally, to opt for or to go for.
I've decided to opt for sanity.
These two expressions are very helpful on the TOEFL test, and I just used one of them in my previous answer. I said, so I opted for a more affordable apartment. Simply put, I chose a cheaper apartment. To opt for means to choose or select something from a set of options. To go for is a more casual phrase that also means to choose or decide on something. Let's look at some examples. I opted for the salad instead of the burger because I'm trying to eat healthier. Many students opt for online courses because they offer more flexibility. Given the opportunity, I decided to go for the promotion at work. If the question is, would you prefer to study abroad or in your home country? Explain your choice. You can say, I'd opt for studying abroad because it offers a unique cultural experience and exposure to different educational systems. Another example, would you rather have a job that pays well or one that you enjoy? Explain your choice. Answer, I would go for the job that I enjoy because when you're doing something you love, work feels less like a chore. As you can see, both phrases are about making a choice, but opt for is a bit more formal and often implies a more considered or thoughtful decision. Go for is more casual and can also imply enthusiasm and decisiveness in making a choice. However, both can be used successfully on the TOEFL test. These are the 12 idiomatic expressions that will help you score higher on test day. Remember to practice their use as much as possible so that they will become a natural part of your answers. My advice to you is to start keeping a list of idiomatic expressions that you can use on the TOEFL speaking section. And then, each time you answer a TOEFL speaking question, look at the list and think about which of these phrases would be a good match for your answer. We're going to see how using linking words can make a difference in the TOEFL speaking section and discuss 16 of the most important linking words you can use. Stick around as we dive into this important skill to help you achieve your dream score. Let's get started. The first question is, what are linking words? Linking words are words or phrases that act as bridges between sentences or paragraphs. For example, and, but, so, on top of that, even if, unless, and so on. They help connect ideas smoothly and make your writing or speaking easier to understand. Adding them to your answers makes them sound less robotic. In fact, effective use of linking words improves the coherence and fluidity of the answer, making it sound more natural and easier to understand. As we just discussed, a clear and natural answer is the key to a high score. There are 3 typical mistakes TOEFL students make with linking words, and I want you to discover them for yourself. Take a look at this question. It's a typical one you might get in the first part of the TOEFL speaking section. You have 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to speak. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? If you want to succeed in business, being outgoing and friendly is very important. Now listen to my first answer and tell me what you think. I agree with the statement that being outgoing and friendly is important for success in business. It helps in building rapport with clients, colleagues, and customers. This can lead to better negotiations and opportunities. My boss is a very sociable person. He makes business connections easily. This has allowed him to expand his business and find many business partners. Being outgoing and friendly creates a positive work environment and makes networking easier. We always have a friendly environment at work. We know we can trust each other. As you can see, the first mistake is to avoid connecting words altogether. Not only does it make your answer sound robotic and strained, but it also does not allow you to elaborate on your ideas. Use complex and compound sentences and connect your ideas logically. You'd be surprised, but in my one-on-one sessions, I often see advanced students who are so stressed about staying on time that they forget even the most basic linking words, such as also, but, and so. If you feel you need extra help, you can check out our brand new Mastering the IELTS Test prep book. It's a comprehensive guide to the test that will teach you everything you need to know about the IELTS test in just a few days. The link is in the description below. Answer 2. In my opinion, I strongly agree with the statement that being outgoing and friendly is crucial for success in business, as effective communication and relationship building are fundamental pillars in the realm of business. First and foremost, being outgoing and friendly promotes positive interactions with clients, customers, and colleagues. Furthermore, a friendly disposition contributes to a conducive work environment. In addition, such individuals are adept at diffusing tensions and resolving conflicts amicably, thus fostering a harmonious workplace culture. However, it is important to recognize that success in business requires a multifaceted approach. I won't go any further because I think you can see my second point. Mistake number 2, using formal linking words. The thing is, if you go online and search for linking word lists, you will see both formal and informal linking words mixed together. This is why many students use words like moreover, nevertheless, and to exemplify in their answers, thinking it will increase their score. But it won't. Native speakers don't converse this way. So save these formal alternatives for the writing section and focus instead on the linking words used in spoken English. The same answer also sheds light on the third mistake: using linking words incorrectly. Some students try to use as many of them as possible. They literally start every single sentence with a linking word. Others simply use them incorrectly. Either way, the result is often that their answers sound forced and unnatural. And remember, sounding natural is the most important thing to focus on. So, make sure you sprinkle your answers with 2 to 3 informal linking words instead of stuffing them with tons of formal ones. This will not only help you sound natural in the first question of the speaking section, but it will also help you express your ideas well on the second, third, and fourth tasks of the test. For example, by starting your sentences with while, even if, unless, even though, you can create complex sentences that will allow you to convey the same message more quickly and give you enough time to include many details from the recording. Now that we're getting to the linking words themselves, your mini assignment is to watch the lesson carefully and write down the ones you find most useful. You don't have to learn and use them all. Just pick 3 to 5 linking words you feel comfortable using in your answers. Then, answer this question using the linking words you learned. Feel free to share your responses in the comments below. And remember that simply adding linking words to your answers isn't enough to get a high score. There are a number of other important factors to consider. If you're about to take the test and want to find out what you're doing wrong and how you can score higher, enroll in our TOEFL prep course and have your speaking and writing responses evaluated. The promo code link is below. Let's begin. The first 5 linking words that you definitely know are first, second, also, but, and so. I don't need to explain how to use them, but I want to emphasize that even though they're very basic, I still highly recommend using them in your answers. For example, you can say, I agree that being outgoing and friendly is the key to success in business. First, when you're friendly, it's easier to connect with people like clients and colleagues, which helps build trust and can lead to more opportunities. Successful entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs are often known for their exceptional ability to communicate and build relationships. Also, a friendly atmosphere at work promotes teamwork and makes everyone happier. Getting back to the Steve Jobs example, his charismatic charm allowed him to connect with people on a personal level, which helped him inspire and motivate his team by fostering a sense of loyalty and commitment among employees. So yes, being outgoing and friendly is a big deal in business. As you can see, using even such basic transitions as first, also, and so can help you build an effective response. Let's look at some more linking words. For example, to illustrate. To give examples, use for example or to illustrate. I could have said, for example, successful entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs are often known for their exceptional ability to communicate and build relationships. You can also just use the linking words like or such as I did in my example. Successful entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs, or successful entrepreneurs such as Steve Jobs. The next few linking words are unless, even if, while, and even though. I find them especially useful in the integrated speaking section. Imagine you have to summarize a lecture in 60 seconds. You should include a lot of details. But as you go, you feel like you're running out of time. A great solution is to introduce complex, compound, and complex compound sentences. This will help you say the same thing in a much shorter way. Let's look at a few examples taken from answers to integrated speaking questions. Even though children may not know how to behave at first, they soon learn that bad behavior is punished and good behavior is rewarded. Number 2. Also, the buses only run once an hour, which means that even if the bus service is introduced, it won't be as effective as riding a bicycle because students will end up wasting too much time waiting for the next bus. Number 3. So, unless a car works the way it's supposed to and lasts a long time without breaking down, it's considered unreliable. Number 4. While the health center does need more doctors, it's tiny and there is simply not enough space to accommodate them. If you want to explain the reason or cause for something, you can use that's why and as a result. For example, I've been making an effort to prioritize sleep. That's why I feel more refreshed and focused during the day. Or, as a result, I struggled to keep up with my coursework and ended up turning in many assignments at the last minute. Finally, to add another point, you can simply use also or use on top of that. I already have a lot on my plate with work, school, and family responsibilities to take care of. On top of that, I have to deal with stress of planning my sister's wedding, which is adding even more pressure. Today, we're focusing on question 1 of the TOEFL speaking section, also known as the independent question. If you want to nail the TOEFL speaking section, this is the question you should start with. Why this question specifically? Well, let me tell you something. In my Zoom lessons, I work with students from all walks of life. Some preparing on their own, others taking consultation after the TOEFL course to evaluate their speaking skills, and those who have already taken the test and are now looking for guidance to improve their score. And guess what? 99% of them find this question the hardest. So, why is this question so challenging? And more importantly, how can you score higher? That's exactly what we're going to cover in today's video. Let's dive in. What does a high-scoring answer look like? To get 26 plus on this question, your answer needs to be, first, natural. You should speak at your natural pace, not too fast and not too slow. If you rush, you might mispronounce words or struggle with clarity. If you go too slow, you'll lose fluency and might hesitate too much. How can you test your natural speed? Ask yourself any random question. Then imagine a friend needs your advice and record yourself answering this question as if you're talking to your friend. Then listen back. This is usually your natural speed. Also, remember that some people tend to speak faster and others slower. Both are fine as long as you avoid grammar or vocabulary-related hesitations. 2. Vocabulary rich. Use at least 2 to 3 topic-specific words in each answer. I always recommend making a list of useful words that can apply to different topics. This way, if you add them to your answers consistently while practicing, on test day, you'll use them automatically, just like the simple words you already know. If you aren't sure you can make this word list on your own, use the list we provide in our TOEFL course. I specifically compiled it to include extremely versatile idiomatic words that can boost your score and be used in almost any context. Check it out by clicking the link below. Also, avoid repeating the same words too often. For example, saying school 3 times in 2 sentences can make your answer sound weak. Instead, use synonyms or paraphrase. Your response should also be grammatically solid. While small grammar mistakes won't ruin your score, too many can hurt the fluency of your answers. You shouldn't stress out if you make a mistake, but I always suggest reviewing the most difficult grammar areas so that you can speak without thinking about grammar. The two biggest areas to review are articles and tenses. Mastering these alone can eliminate up to 70% of your mistakes. As you can see, many of the skills you develop for question 1 will also help with other speaking section questions. So improving here can boost your overall performance. Apart from the 3 aspects I just mentioned, your answer should also be well-structured. Organizing information in a clear way can help you speak fluently and show your best performance, while a poor structure can cause you to struggle and make mistakes. This is why an effective structure and a template are crucial for this type of question. You should also know special exercises that will help you improve your enunciation, demonstrate good intonation, fluency, and sound confident on the day of the test. We've included all these in our TOEFL course to make sure you can prepare for the test in a fast, easy, and effective way. Click the link below to check it out. Now it's time for the most interesting part of today's lesson, the sample answers. We'll answer 3 type 1 questions. You can pause the video and try answering on your own first, then continue watching to hear my response. To make this task as practical as possible, write down the interesting phrases and collocations you hear, and then answer again, using them in your responses. Ready? Let's begin. Question 1. Do you prefer studying alone or with a group? I prefer studying on my own because it helps me focus better without distractions. I can set my own pace and go over difficult topics as many times as I need until I fully understand them. I remember back in my freshman year of college, I prepared for tough physics exams by studying in my dorm room. I'd shut myself in, ask my roommate not to disturb me, and spend hours reviewing my lecture notes and working through complex formulas. This method helped me retain information effectively and perform well on the exams. As a result, I became one of the top students and ended up graduating with honors. Now, answer the same question again using the new vocabulary. Question 2. Some people prefer working for a large company, while others prefer a small business. Which do you prefer? I'd rather work for a small company because you really get to enjoy a tight-knit community and closer interaction with your coworkers. In a smaller workplace, employees tend to build stronger relationships, which makes collaboration easier and creates a more supportive environment. Actually, a friend of mine works for a small marketing agency, and she often talks about how everyone knows each other well and works together like a team. Whenever she has a question or a proposal, she can just message her boss on Slack, and they figure things out right away. In contrast, large corporations can feel impersonal since you rarely get to interact with higher executives or see how your work contributes to the company's success. Question 3. Do you prefer taking online courses or attending classes in person? I'm definitely an online class person because this method of studying offers far more flexibility. Think about it. You don't have to commute daily, and you can invest that time in your studies instead, which can be really helpful if your prep time is limited. Many people who opt for traditional classes waste hours stuck in traffic, which can adversely affect their health and productivity over time. Also, online courses can be taken from anywhere in the world. Just recently, a friend of mine completed a Stanford graduate certificate program, even though she lives in Europe, and got the opportunity to learn from top professors and connect with students from all walks of life, all from the comfort of her home. That was it for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to score 30 out of 30 on the TOEFL speaking section, focus on natural delivery, strong vocabulary, and solid grammar. And remember, practice makes perfect. In this video, we'll do an entire TOEFL speaking section together. By the end of this video, I hope you will understand that the TOEFL speaking test is not as scary as it seems, and you will be equipped with all the necessary tools and knowledge to tackle it effectively. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to get more tips and tricks about the test, and click the bell icon to be notified when the next video comes out. Let's get started! The test we'll be taking is from the ETS website. You can find the link below. Try answering the questions yourself first, and then continue watching to hear my answers. For more practice, feel free to watch this video where I analyze another speaking section. Question 1. Independent speaking.
You will now give your opinion about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to speak. Some people enjoy taking risks and trying new things. Others are not adventurous, they are cautious and prefer to avoid danger. Which behavior do you think is better? Explain why.
I believe people should take risks and try new things because it allows them to constantly grow and improve their lives. I remember back in college, I always said yes to all kinds of activities and events. For example, I would join different clubs and sports teams even though I had no prior experience, like playing soccer, fencing, and participating in theater productions. Nothing too risky, of course, but while I was a little nervous at first, it helped me discover new passions and improve my teamwork and communication skills. It also allowed me to build a diverse network of friends from all walks of life, many of whom I still keep in touch with today. This question is usually the hardest for most students because you should speak non-stop for 45 seconds and also think about what to say at the same time. I often see how students struggle with it during the consultations I give for our TOEFL prep course and in my one-on-one sessions. The truth is, it's not as hard as it seems. You should do a certain list of things that will help you answer this question effectively. And don't panic. In fact, this is my favorite part to explain during my consultations because I love to see people who have been struggling with their answers finally start to produce solid responses without pauses, which completely changes their scores. So first, drill the introductory sentence. That's the first sentence in your response, and you should be able to produce it like this for every question you come across. Then, give one reason for your opinion. You can give two if you're a fast speaker, But often having one clear reason is more than enough. Besides, this way you can elaborate on your point and provide more details. Which brings us to part 3, drill examples. In fact, every example you give in the independent question is almost the same. You start by creating context. For example, I remember when I was a kid, I used to ... Then you add details. I'd come back from home and I'd do my homework and then ... And finally, you show some results. Why this example is relevant. For example, this allowed me to ace my exams and ... So for this question, you should simply choose one of the two options. State your choice at the beginning and then give one reason why you think so, and finish with a detailed example. By the way, if you want to know the speaking and writing templates that make up half of your answers and allow you to boost your score from 22-23 to 25-27, click on the link below. By using these templates, you'll feel confident and relaxed on test day and know exactly what to say for each type of question. And because you're watching this video, there is a special promo code you can use. Now, question 2, campus announcement.
The university is making a change in the courses it will offer. First, read the article from the university newspaper about the change. Next, listen to a conversation on the same topic. You will then be asked a question about what you have read and heard. Now listen to two students discussing the article.
Everything all right?
Yeah, I'm just upset about that article I showed you this morning.
Why? What's the big deal?
Well, as an art major, I think it's a big loss for the department. The university's got it all wrong.
What do you mean?
Well, the low enrollment isn't because art majors don't want to take these classes. Problem is, who has time to take them when there are so many other requirements?
I don't understand.
You see, the classes they're eliminating are all optional. The required courses are mostly painting and drawing, and they take up all our time. What we really need are different requirements, then art majors could take a better variety of classes, all the things we're interested in.
That makes sense. But, the thing about the professor.
Well, that's true. But still, they're being drastic. If money's the problem, they could hire a part-time professor. Or, most of the professors in the department have secondary fields.
Really?
Yeah. At least a few painting teachers are also great sculptors. I'm sure one of them could teach a class.
The woman expresses her opinion of the university's plan. State her opinion and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion.
According to the announcement, the university's decision to eliminate the sculpture program is based on a lack of student interest, resulting in low enrollment, and the retirement of the only sculpture professor, which is a problem because of the department's limited budget. However, the speaker disagrees with this decision, since she believes it's a huge loss for the department. First, she says that the sculpture classes are all electives, and students are already overwhelmed with core courses like painting and drawing, so it's not like they are not interested in taking these classes. They simply don't have time. She also believes that changing the course requirements would allow art majors to take a wider range of classes. Secondly, the student says that if money is a problem, the university could hire a part-time professor or ask faculty who have secondary fields in sculpture to step in. She adds that some painting teachers are also great sculptors. This would solve the budget problem while keeping the program alive. For this question and all the other integrated speaking questions, think about your notes. In fact, there are 3 things you should be able to do to succeed in these tasks. 1. Understand the reading and listening material well. 2. Take and organize notes effectively. And 3. Make sure you present the information logically. If you can do this, you'll definitely score at least a 3.5 out of 4 on all these questions. Note that you should paraphrase the information from the reading a bit and include lots of details from the listening. The listening part is more important, So try to spend at least 30 to 40 seconds talking about it. Moving on. Question 3. General to specific.
Read a passage from a psychology textbook. Then, listen to the lecture that follows. Listen to part of a talk in a psychology class.
I think this will help you get a picture of what your textbook is describing. I had a friend who taught in the physics department, Professor Jones. He retired last year. Anyway, I remember, this was a few years ago, I remember passing by a classroom early one morning just as he was leaving, and he looked terrible. His clothes were all rumpled, and he looked like he hadn't slept all night. And I asked if he was okay. I was surprised when he said that he never felt better, that he was totally happy. He had spent the entire night in the classroom working on a mathematics puzzle. He didn't stop to eat dinner, he didn't stop to sleep, or even rest. He was that involved in solving the puzzle. And it didn't even have anything to do with his teaching or research. He had just come across this puzzle accidentally, I think in a mathematics journal, and it just really interested him. So he worked furiously all night and covered the blackboards in the classroom with equations and numbers, and never realized that time was passing by.
Explain flow and how the example used by the professor illustrates the concept.
The reading is about flow, which is when you are so immersed in an activity that challenges your physical and mental abilities that you lose track of time and feel deeply satisfied with what you are doing. The professor delves deeper into the subject by giving an example of his friend, Professor Jones, who used to teach in the physics department. He says that his friend once stayed up all night working on a math puzzle that he had stumbled upon and which had no connection to his research or classes. He adds that Jones was so excited to solve it that he worked hard all night, writing numbers and equations on the blackboards in the classroom, without stopping for dinner, sleep, or rest, completely forgetting the time. However, when the professor saw him the next morning, looking disheveled and terrible, his friend Jones said that he had never felt so happy. How was that? For this question, try to avoid pausing too much and using too many and so on. Does that mean you should talk like a robot? Not really. You can pause, but not too much. If you pause every 1 or 2 words, it will lower your delivery score. Also, don't repeat the same words too often. You don't want to say influence 3 to 5 times in your answer. Instead, think about how you can paraphrase or change the structure of your sentences. When practicing, it's always good to record yourself speaking, or even script your answers for the first few attempts to see if you have favorite filler words or words you keep repeating. But I think the main point here is to be able to give a lot of information in a short amount of time. So you'll need complex and compound sentences. Add sentences with which, when, if, so, while, and so on. This will make your life a lot easier. Question 4. Academic lecture.
You will listen to part of a lecture. You will then be asked a question about what you heard. Listen to part of a lecture in a biology course.
Human beings aren't the only animals that use tools. It's generally recognized that other animals use tools as well, use them naturally in the wild, without any human instruction. But when can we say that an object is a tool? Well, it depends on your definition of a tool. And in fact, there are 2 competing definitions, a narrow definition and a broad one. The narrow definition says that a tool is an object that's used to perform a specific task, but not just any object. To be a tool according to the narrow definition, the object's gotta be purposefully changed or shaped by the animal, or human, so that it can be used that way. It's an object that's made. Wild chimpanzees use sticks to dig insects out of their nests, but most sticks lying around won't do the job, they might be too thick, for example. So the sticks have to be sharpened so they'll fit into the hole in an ant hill or the insect nest. The chimp pulls off the leaves and chews the stick and trims it down that way until it's the right size. The chimp doesn't just find the stick. You could say it makes it in a way. But the broad definition says an object doesn't have to be modified to be considered a tool. The broad definition says a tool is any object that's used to perform a specific task. For example, an elephant will sometimes use a stick to scratch its back. It just picks up a stick from the ground and scratches its back with it. It doesn't modify the stick, it uses it just as it's found. And it's a tool under the broad definition, but under the narrow definition it's not because, well, the elephant doesn't change it in any way.
Using points and examples from the talk, describe the two different definitions of tools given by the professor.
In the lecture, the professor discusses two competing definitions of tools that can be used both by animals and humans. The first is the narrow definition. According to it, a tool is an object that has been intentionally modified or shaped to perform a task. She gives the example of wild chimpanzees who use sticks to get insects out of their nests. To do this, however, the chimps have to modify the sticks. They remove the leaves and chew the sticks so that they have the right size to fit into the insect nests. In this way, the chimpanzees adapt the object to their needs, which fits the narrow definition of a tool. The broad definition, on the other hand, is that a tool is any object that is used for a specific task without the need for modification. An example given in the lecture is that of elephants using sticks to scratch their backs. The elephants simply pick up a stick from the ground and use it without making any changes to it. So under the broad definition, even though it's not modified in any way, it's still a tool. This is the second most difficult question on the TOEFL speaking test. The main challenge here is to understand the information well and not get overwhelmed by the number of details. I know the first time you hear a lecture like this, you think, oh my god, how am I supposed to write all this down? Well, don't try to write down too much. What you should do instead is write down words that will guide you through your answer. You should also organize your notes clearly. For example, tools, used by animals, humans, two definitions, one, narrow definition, this is the first definition. Then we explain it, intentionally modified, shaped, animal, human, perform specific task, wild chimpanzees, use sticks, dig insects, nests, modify sticks, remove leaves, chew, right size. Having these notes would help you answer the question without getting lost. But the most important thing is to understand the main idea. That way, even if you don't remember all the details, you'll still be able to summarize the lecture well. As you probably know, the TOEFL speaking section has just 4 questions. The first one is the independent speaking question. You'll have 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to answer. Let's give it a try. Answer the question yourself first. Then continue watching to hear my response. Ready? Let's go. I don't agree that money and power define success, because for me, success is more about achieving personal goals and finding happiness in life. Someone might not earn a lot of money or have a lot of influence, but they can still feel deeply fulfilled by their work. For example, I have a friend who runs a small community art studio. She doesn't make a fortune, but she loves helping others express themselves creatively, and that brings her a lot of satisfaction. Also, having good health and strong relationships is crucial. You could be the wealthiest person in the world, but if you're lonely or unhealthy, it's hard to feel truly successful. In my Zoom lessons, I see the majority of students struggle with this specific question. This usually happens because they 1. Worry too much, 2. Overthink their reasons and examples, and try to say something very sophisticated, and 3. Try to fit 2 reasons and examples into 45 seconds. As a result, they end up scoring much lower than they could. However, there are a few tips that can help you ace this question and stop being afraid of it. 1. Don't give 2 reasons if you're a slow speaker. Instead, give 1, but explain it well. You don't even realize how having 1 reason instead of 2 makes your life easier. You no longer need to come up with 2 reasons. And you also don't have to rush. This way, you can speak confidently and consistently. 2. Don't rush. If you speak too fast, you will make more hesitations and mistakes. Keep your speed natural. If I try to speak very, very fast in a limited amount of time, of course I'll panic and start saying things like and so on. Instead, imagine you're explaining your point to a friend and speak at that pace. 3. Don't focus on grammar and vocabulary on test day. When you practice at home, record your answers and then listen to them to spot grammar mistakes. Focus on fixing those mistakes until you're accurate. For vocabulary, write down 5 words you might use for each question and practice answering the question with them a few times. But on test day, focus on your ideas, not grammar or fancy words. 4. Avoid being too formal or informal. Again, imagine you're talking to a friend. Keep it fairly informal, but avoid slang. It's still an exam. If you do this, you'll see that answering this type of question will become a lot easier. Finally, tip number 5, start each answer the same way. It's important to memorize specific openings for each type of question. For agree or disagree questions, you want to start your answers one way. For the preference question, another way, and so on. This way, on the day of the test, you won't be thinking, oh my god, what can I say? How should I start? Instead, you'll have a clear structure in your mind and a few seconds to collect your thoughts as you begin with a familiar phrase. This is where templates come in handy. These are simple structures that help you organize your response and include all the important details in a short amount of time. They can boost your score from 23 to 27 in just a few days. So make sure to use templates in your preparation. I often see students with an excellent level of English who keep scoring 22, 23, or 24 simply because they either don't use templates at all or use them incorrectly. You can find high-scoring templates in our TOEFL course by clicking the link below. Now, question 2. It's a question about campus announcement. Here, you'll need to read a small announcement and then listen to a conversation between 2 people discussing this announcement. You'll then need to say what the announcement is about, what the active speaker's opinion is, and what 2 reasons he or she gives to support their opinion. Remember that questions 2, 3, and 4 are all integrated questions, which means they require you to understand some information first and then produce it in a limited time. This is where notes are most important. I know some students who actively use notes when they speak, while others prefer to avoid following them. But whether you use them or not while speaking, you need to have them to ensure you capture all the necessary information. As you read, write down the main idea of the text and the 2 sub-ideas. For example, the university is going to renovate the library. Why? Because it's 1, too old, and 2, overcrowded. Then, as you listen to the conversation, write down the active speaker's opinion, use A if they agree, and D if they disagree. Also, write down the most important keywords for both reasons supporting their opinion. This way, you'll know exactly what information you're looking for and what you should include in your answer. If you want to find out more about this question, feel free to watch this video later. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the upcoming speaking section practice videos. Let's begin!
Now listen to 2 students discussing the newspaper article.
You know, this makes so much sense. I wonder why it took them so long.
Oh, I don't think it makes sense.
Why not?
Well, I don't think you need to have similar interests to make friends. Look at my roommate and me. We're completely different. I mean, she's a French major and I'm studying biochemistry. She's really into sports and well, let's just say I'm not very athletic.
Yeah, but you guys are good friends.
Exactly. That's my point. We get along great.
I see. But you have to admit, there are a lot of cases where...
Yeah, I know. Cases where people decide they have to move out. But, well, nobody moves out just because they don't have the same interests as their roommate. Maybe they have very different schedules or
they have a chance to move to a better location.
Yeah. Anyway, my point is that there's no reason to expect a big drop. People are still going to want to move.
For all kinds of reasons.
I can say, The university plans to match freshman students with their dorm roommates based on similar interests, believing this will help them get along better and reduce the number of students who want to switch rooms mid-year. However, the speaker disagrees with this idea. First, she argues that students don't necessarily need to have similar interests to become good friends. She mentions that she gets along really well with her roommate, even though they don't have much in common. She's studying biochemistry while her friend is majoring in French. She's not very sporty, while her roommate is really into sports. Second, she believes that no one chooses to switch rooms simply because they have different interests. Most of the time, students decide to move because their schedules are very different, or because they want a better location. Since there are various reasons why people end up switching dorms, matching them based on interests won't solve the problem. If you want to answer TOEFL speaking questions without hesitation, panic, or mistakes, click on the link below and enroll in our TOEFL course. We'll teach you how to take effective notes, speak confidently, and most importantly, provide high-scoring templates for each question to boost your score. We'll also go through TOEFL reading passages together, analyze each question type in detail, and much more. For those of you who have been struggling with the TOEFL test for a long time and want personalized feedback, you can choose our Pro package and get a consultation with me. I'll evaluate your writing and speaking and tell you what you should do differently to get a better score. Question 3 is another integrated question. Again, you'll have 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak. This time, the reading and listening will be a bit more academic. You'll read a text explaining some concept, then listen to a lecture which will provide an example or explain the same concept in even more detail. Your job is to summarize both the reading and the listening. My tip for this question is to remember the 20-40 rule. You should spend no more than 20 seconds summarizing the reading and at least 40 seconds summarizing the lecture. This way, you'll have more than enough time to include all the necessary details.
Okay, so schools are a good example of a place where this can happen. We have schools, of course, as a place for children to be educated, and teachers are hired to actually educate the students, right? Their job is to ensure that the citizens of our society will have an education. But in order for teachers to give children a good education, there are various requirements they need to impose. Like, for instance, coming to class on time, which is important, right? For the learning process to go smoothly. It's directly related to making sure kids get a good education. But sometimes these requirements, well, they can actually work against students getting a good education. Like, say in one school, they have a policy that students must always show up to class on time. And a teacher in that school, to ensure that students show up on time, this teacher insists that if students arrive late, they aren't allowed in the classroom. And no matter what the reason, anytime a student shows up late, the teacher enforces this, won't let them in the class. Well, although the policy seems to be in the best interest of a child getting a good education, because it's meant to ensure students get the most possible learning time, well, think about it. If students do end up showing up late to class for whatever reason, they'll have to miss the entire class, which means they'll miss out on the opportunity to learn. So in effect, too much emphasis on the policy can get in the way of the child's education.
The reading passage is about goal displacement, which happens when people in an organization focus too much on rules and procedures meant to achieve a goal. As a result, the organization's ability to reach its objectives is hindered. In the lecture, the professor provides an example of how goal displacement occurs in schools. He explains that teachers are hired to educate kids, and they must follow many requirements to facilitate the learning process, such as arriving to class on time. However, sometimes these requirements adversely affect kids' education rather than help. For example, if a school policy requires students to show up on time, a teacher might insist that latecomers cannot enter the classroom. While this policy might seem beneficial, ensuring students have the full learning time, it can lead to students missing the entire class if they're late for any reason. So placing too much emphasis on this seemingly positive requirement might ultimately get in the way of their education. Finally, it's time for question 4. You'll have 20 seconds to prepare this time, and the same 60 seconds to speak. You'll listen to an academic lecture, and then you'll need to summarize it. Here's a small tip from me. Use fewer, longer sentences instead of many short ones. This will help you fit the same number of details into 60 seconds. I usually do a session with all my students on complex and compound sentences. And after they start using them, they're able to give their answers fluently without rushing too much at the end. This happens because they learn how to present a lot of details in a short amount of time. This skill is the key for this question, as well as for question 3. Let's begin.
Many animals travel in groups in order to protect themselves. This makes it difficult for a predator to capture them for food because it's hard for the predator to target one single animal and stay focused on it. But there are ways that predators can overcome this problem. Let's look at a couple of strategies some predators use. One way in which predators can hunt animals that live in groups is that they can identify an individual animal that looks different from the others. An animal may have a particular feature that makes it stand out from the others. For example, there's a small fish called a minnow. Minnows usually swim together in groups, and most minnows appear similar to each other. But sometimes there's a minnow that's a different color from the others, and what scientists have discovered is that predator fish will often chase after this differently colored minnow because it is easy to see. So the predator can more easily focus on it and catch it. Now, another way predators can hunt animals that live in groups is by physically breaking up the group in order to separate an individual animal from the rest. Sharks, for example, have been observed to swim directly into a large group of fish and thrash their tails around in order to scatter the fish. When the shark moves its tail so forcefully and so fast, it breaks up the group of fish into smaller groups that start swimming away in different directions. Then the shark can more easily locate and go after an individual fish that has become separated from its group.
The lecture is about 2 strategies predators use to target and capture a single animal when prey animals are traveling in groups for protection. The first strategy is to identify an animal that is different and thus stands out from the others. For example, when predators are targeting minnow fish that look very similar to each other, they will try to spot the one fish that has a different color. In this case, it becomes easier for the predator to focus on the distinct animal and catch it. The second strategy involves physically breaking up the group, so the target animal becomes separated from the rest. Sharks, for example, often swim directly into a large school of fish, trashing their tails forcefully and quickly to cause the fish to scatter. As a result, one fish becomes isolated, and the shark can easily track it down. That's the end of the speaking test. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below which question was the most challenging. Also, tell me which section of the TOEFL test you're struggling with the most. That's the end of today's video. Thanks for watching. If you're currently preparing for the test and want to check how ready you are, click here to get your writing and speaking scored. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tips and tricks on how to ace the TOEFL test. And remember, scoring 100+ on the TOEFL isn't rocket science. It's the little things you do that make all the difference. As always, I wish you all a stellar TOEFL score. Until next time, bye-bye.